All right, I had a winning week. I went 3-2 thanks to the Jags, Ravens, and Cowboys. Chad Millman's CCO Action Network, all odds provided by FanDuel. I said last week I will not be mocked or ridiculed. I loved Dallas. I think sometimes you have to be honest about what a team is. Tampa was 8-9. It's sort of what they are, and it was unveiled. So this week we've got 4 games, and I feel there's always, whenever you go into these big games, I try to simplify everything. What are these teams at this point, and what are they not? So I don't like big favorites. You know this, Chad. But Kansas City minus 8.5 is my play. Andy Reid off a bye is the greatest NFL coach ever. They met in the first matchup, and as Greg Cosell pointed out to me, there are some Jacksonville personnel disadvantages on defense here they probably won't be able to overcome. They're still in a rebuild. I argue they're a year ahead of schedule. Jacksonville's off their biggest franchise win in years. This is still a quarterback with less than, 40 starts. This is a lot to ask for the Jags. I like the Chiefs by 10 or more, sharp or square.
So it's square, but not like egregiously square. It's square because there is so much data for trends, so much analysis broadly in this situation for number 1 seeds underperforming against the market, and for the Chiefs specifically underperforming against the market when they are really big favorites. So that's why. And what's really interesting, and we're going to get through this with all the games today, there are very specific play the trends sides and play the matchup sides. And so with this one, the wise guys are playing the trends. Agreed, Jacksonville's pass defense is not very good. But the Chiefs are not nearly as explosive as they were with Tyreek Hill. They tend to play ball control when they get a lead. And ball control for the Chiefs doesn't mean they're just running it 50 times. It means shorter passes. It means a little bit more conservative on the play calling, not the sort of sling it like Patrick Mahomes normally does. So I think that you're starting to see the wise guys really like the Jaguars here. A couple other trends that you should think about is that in the past 20 years, number 1 seeds are 13, 25, and 1 against the spread in this round. And when they're favored by less than 10 points, they're 8, 22, and 1. So that hits the button for 2 number 1 seeds this weekend.
All right. Hey, listen, Miami kept it close with Buffalo with Skylar Thompson. So that was a little bit of a last 2 times Miami played them. I thought Mike McDaniel outcoached McDermott. Get to that in a second. So Giants plus 7.5 at Philly is the side for me. I worry about Jalen Hurts, 100% health. I worry of some of his inactivity. I worry about a team that's become increasingly injured and turnover prone in the last 2 months of the season. The Giants have a way they have to play, but with Daniel Jones now running the football more, they're a little better third down team. They can play keep away a little better. Now, that said, Minnesota's awful, and Daniel Jones' 2 best games were against the Vikings. So let's slow down. I like Philly to win, but in a division rivalry game, Philadelphia was not playing great at the end of the year. I think the bye does them no favors here. I'm going to take the 7.5 sharper square.
Colin, I normally say when I don't have a consensus that it is completely split. What I will say this time is that there has been really smart money at big wagers on the Eagles and really, really smart money at big wagers on the Giants. And this is where covering sports betting gets the most fascinating, games like these. We just talked about trends versus matchups. We talked about public. Often we talk about being on the public side, fading the public, being against the public. Right now, the Giants are a very, very public team. They did exactly what you just said against the Eagles. They had 10 or 11 wins in one-score games. They were a covering machine. The public is down on the Eagles right now. They are not even the favorite to win the Super Bowl from the NFC. That is the Brock Purdy-led Niners. So what you're doing, if you like the Eagles, you're actually fading the public right now because the Giants are a public dog. And where this gets really, really interesting, you are seeing massive amounts of money and massive amounts of tickets coming in on the Giants. And this line has been sitting at 7.5 since Monday. So we're now at Thursday. You get a massive amount of money on one side, and bookmakers usually move the line. They haven't moved the line because they're also getting significant wise guy play on the Eagles. I will tell you, as we often talk about, the wise guy calls that we get for the Favorites podcast, call it Sharp Calls, completely split on this, but we did go ahead and decide to make taking the Eagles at 7.5 our big balls bet of the week because we like the matchup for the Eagles on the field better. We think they're a better team. Jalen Hurts, Jordan Davis on the field at the same time have not lost once this year. If we did not have the public situation, if the Eagles hadn't been fading at the end of the year when Jalen Hurts was hurt, they'd probably be 10-point favorites. It's a tough one, though, Colin. World is divided. This is splitting the world. This and the debt ceiling are splitting the world in two.
And Elon Musk on Twitter. Yeah, yes, you're right.
Exactly.
Okay. This one I have no idea. I'm going to take the Bengals up to 5.5 FanDuel odds. I said this today on the show, and I'll get pushback, I'm sure on social media. If the O-line was healthy for Cincinnati, I think they'd blow out Buffalo. I think they're a significantly better situational team. I think they're more balanced offensively. They're not actually as beholden to Joe Burrow as the Bills' offense is now to Josh Allen. Greg Cosell said it today. Take out Allen and Stephon Diggs. Buffalo's offense personnel is just not that talented, and you see it on film. Buffalo is mistake-prone, but they played very poorly against Miami. Sean Payton told me the best weeks to be a coach when you win and play like shit because you can ride those players all week. I think Buffalo's going to play a lot better. Bengals are missing 3 offensive linemen. The 5.5 is a lot to give Burrow, who's an excellent road quarterback, so I probably play Cincinnati with no conviction at all. I think Buffalo rebounds and plays well. I'll take the Bengals in the point, sharp or square.
So flip around everything you just said and don't be a square and take the Bills. Because if the Bengals were not missing 3 offensive linemen would be like saying, if I had scored 100 points in a game in Hershey, Pennsylvania, I'd be an NBA legend. That's how sort of fantastical that kind of if-then statement is, okay?
Right.
They don't have the 3 linemen, and we saw what happened to the Bengals when they were missing them against a Ravens team.
They can't go downfield.
Not even downfield. Joe Burrow can't even drop back. Like, the second he drops back, someone is in his lap, and the Ravens were doing that with a lot of heavy blitzing and pass rushing. The Bills have a very deep defensive line. They're a top 10 pressure rate defensive line without blitzing. And you make the points about playing badly, right? So let's look at 2 teams that did not play well in the opening round of the playoffs that were playing against backup quarterbacks. Buffalo Bills played Skylar Thompson. They played terrible. They had really bad breaks. They still kind of won that game handily, right? The score was closer than it appeared in the fourth quarter. The Bengals played a backup quarterback. They gained 234 yards on offense, and they won the game on a lucky 98-yard fumble recovery by a defensive lineman, not because their offense did anything special and Joe Burrow did anything special. So this game opened at 6.5. It got bet down to 3.5. It hit 3.5, and the wise guy started pummeling it. 3.5, 4, 4.5, 5, 5.5. I would tell anybody, bet the Bills at 5.5. If it gets to 6, You walk away, maybe you take a piece of the Bengals. But when you get from, say, 4.5 to 5.5, you're kind of in these dead numbers, right? The games really don't land. It's either going to land on 6 or it might land on 4. So I say you take the 5.5 with the Bills.
I
hope I convinced you of that. I really do. You're on the fence on this one. So
no, you did. I'm going to take the Bills.
The offensive line thing, you cannot discount that. It's massive.
Well, and also a huge component of Burrow's greatness is the sneaky deep ball. He's deadly accurate 15 yards in, yet he's got a Tony Romo. He loves to let it rip, sometimes in a double coverage, and he's really successful. You just took that out. They become much easier to defend. They're a nibble team. They because when you're missing 3 offensive linemen, the vertical pass is out. So they become a very safe offense.
Yeah.
I don't think you can go to Buffalo. Okay. So from time to time, I admit this. I actually admit it a lot. Is that my wife's an artist. And so she sees things I don't. And sometimes I'll see a number and go, well, somebody knows something I don't. I guess the numbers before they come out. And if there's a big variance, and it's about once a week or once every other week, I'm like, wow, that's a big variance. Vegas knows something I don't know. So the Cowboys have a 48-hour minimum preparation deficit. They didn't get home until 2, 3 in the morning on Tuesday. The Niners game was over Saturday afternoon. Also, short week facing now the most physical team in the league. It's not like it's a finesse team. Like I talked to Gerald McCoy about this, and he said, forget the prep time. Is that body going to be ready for San Francisco for 3 hours? They are just, it is sumo wrestling. It is just contact and pounding. And my guess on the number was 5.5, and it came in at 3.5. I thought at 5.5 it was safe. At home, 2-day prep advantage, smartest offensive coach in a game in which Seattle's not physical. They tossed them around. So it tells me the game's going to be closer. Vegas is smarter than I am. So I'd take the Cowboys and the points, and I hate it. Sharp or square?
This is the sharpest thing you've ever said. No, as a sports analyst talking about betting, you've said many, many other sharp things in the context of your life. But in this particular context, this is the sharpest thing you've ever said. It's fishy, man. The game actually opened at 4.5, got bet down to 4, got bet down to 3.5. Somebody took a little bit of money on the Niners at 3.5. But this is a pros Joe's game. Like majority of the tickets on the Niners, majority on the money on the Cowboys right now. And there's a really interesting narrative taking place in the betting world. And this is why I love covering the betting world and why I always have. There is a conversation, a shadow conversation happening amongst millions and millions of bettors that influences billions of dollars in markets, right? But it's an entirely different narrative than what is happening in sort of the general sports debate space when people are analyzing these games. And the narrative right now is that if you look back, who have the Niners played? And when they have played those teams, has their defense been not as good as we thought? And so Brock Purdy's been winning all of these games against quarterbacks who a lot of quarterbacks might be able to beat if they have Kyle Shanahan as their play caller and their scheme designer. And meanwhile, the defense, terrible first half against Geno Smith, terrible second half against the Raiders. You're starting to see a lot of cracks. That is a narrative that is taking place in the betting community right now with the Niners defense. And so I have been shocked to hear about the Cowboy love this week because, I mean, especially me, I was so anti-Cowboys last week, sadly. But this week, the wise guys are on the Cowboys. It was a stunner for me.
I hate all my picks. I've never said that.
Every week. At this time of year, Colin, there's nothing to love. You're grinding it out. You're hanging on by your fingernails. You're just hoping, dear God, can we get to the Super Bowl?
I mean,
this
I
could be the
thought
week.
I thought the Chiefs was so sharp. I was going to call my pick cheddar. It was so good. And now I wouldn't bet a nickel on that thing.
So what's interesting about that is I would say of the sharp plays, that's the one that I think people are most skeptical about. What is starting to get some play is the under in that game. Andy Reid at Arrowhead in his career, the unders are about 58%. When he is a 7-point favorite or more, that climbs to 70%. So the unders at 53 could go down to 52.5. So there's a lot of conversation about that.
Okay.
But that kind of game script, if it's an under, plays to the strength of Jacksonville keeping it close.
That's right.
Yep.
I mean, it's hard to give up 8.5 at the score if they total up at 52. That's a lot of points.
It's a lot of points. It's a lot of points. Betting is hard, Colin. Not everybody can do it.
No, I hit, listen to this, Millman, 55% in the year. So my Blazing 5 is done. So now I only have 4 games. So 55% on the year, 55.5%. I've always said 56 is my goal, 56.5, because you could be a pro bettor at 56. I am not, but I feel good. Last year was my worst year. It was the COVID year. I couldn't figure, I had no rhythm all year. So I ended up last 2 weeks, 3-2, 55.5. I like that. Like it.
If you could grind out 3-2 every single week, you're a professional bettor. That's the goal, right? When we did the, Colin, when Simon Hunter and I would go through our 5 best picks every week on the Favorites podcast, our goal every week, 3-2, 3-2, 3-2, 3-2. Because look at that. You go 3-2 over 18 weeks, you end the year nearly 20 games over 500. If you're like, who's going to walk away saying, I just went 20 games over 500 betting NFL? And if you're betting the same number of dollars, and dollars equates to units, whatever your unit size for you, a unit size might be $1 million a game. For me, it's like, maybe $10 a game. But a unit size, I'm up 20 units at the end of the year. That's fantastic. So
I always look at $100 a game, because if I win it, I take the little girl out for a snappy tequila shot or 2 and some Mexican food. Yeah. Leave a tip. That's how I look at it. Free dinner with my beautiful redhead, my smart, beautiful, talented redheaded wife.
That's the way to go.
I think Bills and Cowboys I can live with. Giants, I feel like crap. Chiefs is ridiculous now.
I'm going to bet the Eagles, and it makes me sick to my stomach. I've bet the Cowboys. I'm sick to my stomach. I bet the Jaguars. I'm sick to my stomach. The only one I feel good about is the Bills. So you know what that means? Bills are the only ones going to lose.